Good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending the Student Association Presidential Debate. My name is Sid Malvia, and I'll be moderating this debate as the Editor-in-Chief of the Knight News on behalf of the Office of Student Development and Leadership. Please see the following introductory videos of the candidates. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Luis Villa, and I am running for President of Student Association. I am currently pursuing a major in design and a minor in photography. Some positions that I've held within Queens College is firstly being the current QC Arts Club president and also being the co-chair for public relations within Student Association. I decided to run for president of Student Association to help students on numerous issues prior and during this unexpected pandemic. By doing this, I plan on increasing activity and bringing changes overall to the current structure within Student Association. And this also includes benefits for clubs and students alike. Thank you, and I hope to get your vote during the elections week on April 11th.
When we left school for the last time on March 11th, no one knew that it would be our last time seeing each other. My name is Zaire Kalu, and during the pandemic, I was elected to serve as your Student Association president. During this time, I stepped up to the plate to be the president of advocacy, advocating for funding CUNY, international students' rights, teaching and testing methods, and a flexible grading policy. I also served as a connector to resources such as food, computers and hotspots, and counseling services. Next year, we plan on having more student-run activities and promoting advocacy for students at home, in person, and in between. We plan on making sure students have equitable access to laptops, hotspots, and everything that we need for our education. We plan on working with the University Student Senate to make sure that financial aid looks at this year and not from 2 years ago, because finances have changed, especially during the pandemic. We will continue to uphold our values of transparency, diversity, and inclusion. Vote for students serving students!
Alrighty, thank you to you both. And with that being said, let's jump right into the debate. So the first question I have for you, Zaire, why are you running? And how do you differentiate yourself from your competitor?
So why am I running? That's a great question. So I'm running because of both roots and because I have a vision for the future. So I started Queens College in the SEEK program. The SEEK program is our EOP program on campus. And I started that as president of my generation, right? They do generation leaders. And then I joined Student Association as one of the first runners for this party. I joined Student Association as chair of philanthropy and also a senator. As chair of philanthropy, I hosted a lot of programs. We raised money for the American Cancer Association. We gave out food to the homeless in the city, and we did a lot of philanthropic activities, including votes through the Senate. So I moved on to being programming chair last year, on top of me being a senator, and also being an academic senator, student senator, per the Academic Senate Executive Committee, where I held the position as an academic senator, and I was also part of the Student Senate Executive Committee. During my time as programming chair, we held many programs, including informational programs such as town halls, where students can ask faculty directly. We hosted parties, right? And we also voted on many things, including on the Queens College Association, the Student Services Corporation, and many boards like that. After being programming chair, I became Student Association president, and through this time, I've used my network as Student Association president to get to know the student leaders, to get to know the clubs and organizations, to help them. Like I said in my video, I've been a big connector this year between being the bridge between students and faculty. I've sat in reopening meetings where I advocated for students in terms of like online learning. Some students may not be able to go in person. We had that At the beginning of the semester, yeah, we advocated for students, international students, so that they could have their rights to go to school here and continue going to school here. What else have I done? I also sorry. I also went to many protests, which included advocating for CUNY funding, and I believe that I'm the right person for this position because I have roots in this party. I love the students. I loved advocating for 20,000 students, and I really think that I have a vision for what I want to do next year also.
Alrighty, thank you, President Kalut. Louis, can you tell us why are you running and how do you separate yourself from your competition?
I am running for change throughout the QC. There is some issues that have been occurring before and during this pandemic. Such things include with the CCP, the clubs outreach, and how they struggle through this pandemic, and as well as students. I have seen Zaire run mental health awareness, advocating for students, and I fully agree and support that, and we do need more of that for all of the students. Furthermore, I believe we can make change and promote more for the students' benefits.
Alrighty, thank you. Zaire, your name was invoked. Do you have any response? And if so, you are entitled to 1 minute.
Yeah, sure, I'll respond. So in terms of CCP, I know this year was difficult in terms of clubs being able to get students to join their club, to get students to come to their programs. That I completely understand, because even in SA, we had some difficulty with getting like a lot of students involved because we're in a pandemic. So one of the things that we voted on this year is a platform, actually, which is going to come into action, where students, they can go into this platform and join clubs automatically. So it'll be a less of a clubs going out and reaching out to students, which is harder, and students logging into this platform and being able to hop into the club that they want. So it's one person going after 20,000 people versus 20,000 people seeing what their interests are and hopping into this platform.
Thank you, President Kalut. That's all the time. My apologies. So on to the next question. Zaire, can you tell us how your party differs from your opponent's party in terms of ensuring the representation of students during this pandemic?
I think my party, we carry a diversity that I love to see. Diversity not only in ethnicity, not only in ethnic background. We have students from differing values, differing views, differing religions, but also in our outreach, right? On my e-board, I have Saskia Van Horn. She is Vice President of ALPHA, which is the Association of Latinx Professionals of America, in which she has a great connection to the Career Engagement Office, right? So through that connection, we can get more internships. We can get more internships for students, more career opportunities. She's hosted business kickoffs where companies like Nike, JP Morgan have attended. And I believe I have a great network myself. I have a big network, not only like in SEEK and in the networks that I've built with the presidents, but also in who I know, right? Whenever I have an issue, whenever something has come up and I need advice, I can, if I need to go into a meeting with faculty, I can contact my network. Joseph, the former Student Association president, asked him to go into this meeting with me. I can contact that former Student Association. President Carmine Kalu asks for advice. I can ask for Bod for advice. Our former lobbying and advising committee chair, Khalil Anderson, he's the current assembly member. So I believe that those networks, they also build me up, right? And I believe it helps me to stand out also because I can get so many different perspectives and views.
Right, thank you. Louis, I'll repeat the question for convenience. How do you see your party differing from the opponent's party in terms of ensuring the representation of students during these turbulent times?
My party is different in terms of handling the current issues. We believe in speaking with the clubs directly on what their issues are, asking students what they would rather see, and then, as mentioned in the previous question, increase more mental health events for the students, food insecurity, and then also reviewing the tuition and how we can benefit students that have been severely impacted with the pandemic.
Right, thank you. On to the next question. Given the different committees within student government and how they specifically target different areas of student life, which area of student life do you see yourself impacting the most? President Kalut, we'll start with you.
I think I can see myself impacting a diverse array of Sorry, can you re-ask the question?
Sure, no problem. Given the different committees within student government, for example, there's programming, philanthropy, so on and so forth, which area of student life do you see yourself impacting the most?
I can see myself we have 11 committees, as in 11 and 1, right? I marched alongside my lobbying and advising committee. We walked the Brooklyn Bridge onto City Hall. Myself, Enrique, Anthony, where we walked across the Brooklyn Bridge and we advocated for lowering tuition, which we were able to receive, thankfully. We got a tuition freeze for the 3rd year in a row. I worked alongside my programming partner, Andre Benjamin, in which we hosted events such as Kusi Runs, which was a running community where we created, right? Where students from their homes, they could run, and whoever runs the longest, they could get like prizes such as an Apple Watch or a duffel bag, which really encouraged students to go out there and be active. Some of the things I also did with programming was we had a dance night, a game night, but we also, with academic affairs, our academic affairs committee, we had town halls, right, where students and faculty could talk directly. Faculty and administration, actually, they could speak directly about their issues. We partnered with academic advising when we had a town hall with in terms of the international students, and so many students came, so many students were informed as to what was going on. So I could see myself working very well with each committee and making sure that we can put our best foot forward.
All right, thank you for that, President Clute. Louis, we'll go to you. I'll repeat the question for convenience sake. Given the different committees within student government, for example, you have programming, philanthropy, academic affairs, so on and so forth, which area of student life do you see yourself impacting the most?
I feel the most impact right now would be programming, on understanding what events are needed throughout the year. I do know that it is 50-50 with a hybrid or online courses when with this pandemic. And it all depends on the future. If there needs to be more in-person events, I'll look forward to that, but also it does include online counseling. And as well, just it depends on the setting.
Okay, thank you. Zaire, let's get back to you. If I could tailor that question to be a little bit more specific. So as you know, Student Association has an Intergree Council Committee and an Athletics Committee formed during the previous administrations. How do you see yourself working to impact those communities, and specifically the Intergree Council student life on campus, as well as athletics, as it relates to working with them and student government? How do you see yourself either bridging the divide or working to amplify their voices?
Yes, so the goal is to amplify their voices and make sure that everyone at the table feels adequately represented. My vice president, Kayla Kempf, she is a proud sister of Sigma Alpha Epsilon Pi, and she is a part of the Intergree Council and holds many positions in that platform. So I plan on working with her to be that bridge to interlock us together and to make sure that we can all stand together and have a powerful voice. Our athletes this year, they weren't able to play as long as they would like to, but we still meet with them. We still have, we had an athletics meeting yesterday, right? And we really want to amplify their voices. And since the pandemic started, athletics was always a conversation of mine. I sit on the ad hoc reopening committee where we discuss reopening. Athletics was always on the conversation as to when our students can play, because a lot of things we saw was like the private students, right? Private school students being able to play, and public school students not being able to. So that was a big conversation of mine during those times.
Thank you. And if I could follow up on that, you talked a little bit about reopening. Assuming we do return in person at a later time during your presidency, if elected, how do you see yourself getting students involved and actually participating in these communities? Because as QC students know who have been on campus, the summit and also the sports complex on campus is kind of isolated. It's towards the corner, and not many students know how to get involved. What would you do to promote involvement in athletics?
To promote involvement in athletics, we'd have more athletic centered and athletic based events. Like we had Midnight Madness. We had Midnight Madness last year. We weren't able to have it this year. We had it last year, and we also had it 2 years ago. And it was where we all promoted, like, where we all went to a basketball game, our home game, and we all promoted Midnight Madness. Everyone came, and the athletics committee really felt involved. We also, when I was philanthropy chair, one of the things that I did was we had a Relay for Life. So when we raised money for the Cancer Association, one of the things that we did was partner with athletics, and we had a game night, right? And all of the athletes came and they helped raise money for the American Cancer Society. And it was a great way to bridge student association, athletics, along with the whole campus community.
All right, thank you, President Clute. Louis, I'll ask you the same question. In regards to the Interdegree Council Committee and the Athletics Committee formed during prior administrations of the Student Association, how do you see yourself working to impact those communities alongside working with those committees?
So I have not speaking with the Interdegree Council or athletics, but I am aware they have been proactive and trying to spread the word. With SA, we can promote it in email blasts, show all the dates on the flyers of specific events where we could promote it, and try to get as much outreach as possible for all students.
All righty, thank you. Let's move on to the next segment, which will be student engagement. So let's chat a little bit about that. So Zaire, how do you see yourself interacting with the Queens College community, as well as the community outside of Queens, Flushing, as it relates to advocating for the needs of Queens College students, staff, and faculty?
Okay, so as it relates to the needs of students, staff, and faculty, how do I see myself interconnecting the Flushing community?
Sure, interacting with them and advocating for their needs.
Okay, some of the things that I've done this year, as you know, we weren't able to go to Albany this year and lobby, right? So some of the things I've done is email elected officials when things have come up in terms of CUNY gaining funding. So some of the things I did is email Senator Tobian Stavinsky, Assemblyman Rosenthal, Assemblyman Anderson, Congressman Meeks, right? So making sure you keep that network, and also our lobbying and advising committee. We held a city council forum, right, for District 23 and 24, where students can actively speak to their elected officials, right then and there. So before they even get into office, they know what QC wants, they know what QC needs, and they can advocate for QC when they get into their positions. So that's one of the ways that I've integrated the Flushing community and with the Queens College community. And you asked, was it programming within? What's the first one?
Sure, I can repeat it. So how do you see yourself interacting with the Queens College community as well as the external community, so the neighborhood surrounding it, as it relates to advocating for the needs of the Queens College students, staff, and faculty?
Okay, so that was outside, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about internally. Throughout this year, VP Alvarez, President Wu, Ms. Jen Jarvis, they can all tell you. I have been in their emails. I have been meeting with them to advocate for everything Queens College, for everything CUNY, for all the needs that we have, be it that students want a hybrid model, right? Whenever that comes up, I bring it up to them, and I always go into those meetings. I go into the meetings with Joseph for QC questions. I go into those meetings for SEEK, and I'm always present with them. I have a really close relationship with the administration, and I always make sure that they know what the students need, right? They know what our needs are, whether it comes to credit, no credit, when we were able to reinstate that last year again, right? First, we met with them, and then we spoke with them through the Senate, and we were able to get it passed. So it's creating that relationship, that bond, and making sure you always stand up for students, right? Because the students come first. The students put you in the position. And when you sit in that room with them, you sit with 20,000 students. So that's something that I always keep in mind whenever I meet with administration.
Hey, thank you, President Lewis. Let's go to you. How do you see yourself interacting with the Queens College community, both internally and externally, as it relates to advocating for the needs of Queens College students, staff, and faculty?
So, in terms of internally, it is best to get the known problems that students have faced, which again, the tuition increases that have been occurring, the credit and no credit system, and then also the food insecurities. The best way externally to combine those two is to make sure we can reach the right departments or organizations and politicians to help out students and vote against any increases or vote for more programs that would benefit each student individually.
Okay, thank you. Zaire, let's go to you. How do you plan to engage some of our non-traditional students? And I'm specifically referring to students who are either adult students, part-time, evening, so on and so forth.
Yes. So how do I plan to engage non-traditional students? So something that we've picked up with the non-traditional committee that we're doing for a second year in a row is tutoring during odd hours, right? One of the main issues is tutoring closes at a certain time, right? And it stops, and those students aren't able to get tutoring after because they have, jobs. So one of the things that we plan on promoting is tutoring during those after hours. We also have we had town halls this year, but we had 2 instead of 1, right? Where the same things are said. So one during free hour for traditional students who were able to make it during free hour, and one also Thursday nights where students can come and hear the same thing, right? They hear the same thing. Everyone's kept in the loop and everyone's involved, and the international students are thought about. So I plan on expanding that and finding ways to expand that.
Thank you. Lewis, let's go to you. How do you plan to engage some of our non-traditional students, which include adult students, part-time students, evening students, and so on and so forth?
So, again, I would have to firstly understand what are the needs. I agree with the tutoring services, which is open with different hours and cannot be accessible for everyone. And then also have dual events where one could be for students, and then for those who are not able to attend, like Zaire mentioned with the town halls. Furthermore, I think the best way for non-traditional is just to understand the needs and then go forward with that.
Alrighty. Do you have any sort of programming in mind? Anything additional? Any sort of plans that you would have if elected?
I would continue the tutoring and then also have a separate event for the non-traditional students who are facing food insecurities, and if they need more or different hours for the mental awareness training.
Okay, duly noted. So let's talk about reopening, which is the topic on most students' minds. Zaire, let's go to you. You just stated earlier that you are a member of the Ad Hoc Reopening Committee. Can you talk about how you would address the challenges in terms of meeting the needs of both in-person and online students? Because inevitably there are some students who have difficulties at home, and going to college and being in person is that one refuge or escape for them. How are you going to try to bridge that communication gap, as online students want to feel safe, but they want to participate in student government, but in-person students have the luxury of actually meeting with you in your office face-to-face, and they can be involved. So what strategies do you have in mind?
A bit of both, right? Mm-hmm. So something that became a huge issue that we saw even like before we even thought about opening school, right? One of the things that came up was, like you said, safety in the home, right? So that's how we worked with the reopening committee to make sure that the library was open at limited hours. So people who didn't have a quiet place to study could go into school and they could study. We now have a mobile food pantry, right? Our shuttle bus wasn't in use. So now it's being used to go to different communities and to drop off bags, right? Bags of food. Counseling center, right? It's open, limited in person because some people aren't comfortable at home behind a screen speaking to counselors. So that's some of the things that we've done so far. Going forward, I think it should be both. I think that a hybrid model the twice. So, right. So if you're going into classes, there should be an online option. There should be an in-person option, because we found that students are taking classes from halfway across the world. Students are taking their classes from Greece. So how will they move back to be able to be an in-person model? So I believe that two options should be offered for the classes, one in person, one online. And if that's not possible, then the professor, right, they could set up a Zoom as they teach, right? And like half the students could be at home, they could be learning the same curricula as the students in person are. And same thing for events, right? So the students are comfortable coming in person, having events on the quad where it's really spacious, distributing masks, hand sanitizer, making sure everyone is safe, but also having that hybrid model where students who don't feel safe coming onto campus are able to express themselves and have the same amount of events online.
Perfect. Thank you for that detailed answer. Lewis, we'll go to you. Can you talk about how you will address the challenges of meeting the needs of in-person students and online students? How are you going to bridge that communication gap, and what strategies will you employ?
So, in reference to what Zaire said, it is best to have most events at the quad where there's no walls, free space, and can ensure a safe and healthy environment for all students that are comfortable with joining. As mentioned with the online, it would be best to have the hybrid model and recorded sessions, whereas for those students who are not able to join the class, let's say 3 to 4, can go back. Because I've seen students have personal emergencies, last minute disconnections, Wi-Fi issues, and I've seen some be rated by the professor, where others should be able to have the best option available to them and necessity. Because we're still going through this pandemic, and some of the professors have been strict and then some have been lenient. And if there's a system where it can be safe and efficient, it could be the best option.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on from reopening to talk about student government finances, which I'm sure, Zaire, is something you're familiar with, given that this year as president, you had to design your own budget. So as you know, Student Association receives approximately over $100,000 from student activity fees for their annual budget to provide for students. What are your plans for that funding in the next fiscal year, assuming you get elected, Zaire?
That's a great question. Thank you so much, Sid. And assuming that I get elected, my plans for the budget is to go into programming and also to go into supporting a safe space for those students that are in person, right? So supplies, so making sure there's hand sanitizer ready, there are masks ready, there are Lysol wipes, right? So just making sure that the students in person stay safe. The only reason why so much of our budget went into programming this year is because we weren't in person for all these supplies. So we plan on pushing that out more next year.
Okay, thank you. Lewis, what's your response?
I'm sorry, to repeat the question.
Sure, no problem. So Student Association receives approximately over $100,000 from student activity fees for their annual budget. What are your plans for the annual Student Association budget, if elected?
So if elected, half of the funds given would go directly to the hybrid model, where we can ensure that all events are done properly and safe, and then also providing more services for the students that could benefit them in terms of if they need any concerns with food, as mentioned previously, the mental health awareness. Because I know I keep going back to this point, but it is a strong issue that is affecting every student, and it should be addressed with the most resources given.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit more about student government finances. I mentioned a little bit earlier that the Student Association budget comes from student activity fees. Now, there have been some talks among students that the student activity fees should be lowered, given that we're not in person and that, you know, there are financial difficulties that everybody's facing. President Kalu, would you be in favor of advocating for a lowering of the student activity fee until we are fully in person?
Yes, I am, 100%. And it is definitely something that I've advocated for in several meetings with administration. The only reason why it was not refunded this year, it was a CUNY decision, right? So it was kind of, it was set in stone,
right? And even though I advocated for it again and again and again, there was no movement. But I 100% believe that student activity fees should be returned.
Okay, thank you. Louis, what is your response to the argument of whether or not student activity fees should be lowered or maintained?
I definitely agree. The student activity fee should be limited because there's nothing really that students are being interactive with. We haven't been able to hold in-person events, have fun, and some of these funds are not even being used. It's like students are paying for something that's not even accessible at a point, and it does need to be decreased by significantly.
All right, and just as a point of clarification, you would argue the same as Zaire in terms of refunding it or lowering?
Lowering and refunding it, because this year students paid for services that weren't even offered in a sense. So I do think it should still be refunded and lowered at the same time.
Okay, let's circle back to a little bit about you two in terms of your leadership qualifications. So President Kalu, can you talk about what experiences prepare you for this job? And you talked a little bit about that earlier, but can you tell us from your previous jobs, what did you take away that you feel prepares you for another term as president?
From this job, I think currently, I think my biggest takeaway was individual connections. Right? This year was a lot of individual connections, individually connecting students to their needs. We had a lot of students who needed access to food, right? And they reached out to me individually, in which I connected them to the resource that they needed. We had students who were not able to reach the disability office, and I was that connector where they reached out to me, and I was able to help them connect. So it was hearing people's stories individually. Oh, also computers and hotspots. I was also a connector to help students get the computers, the Wi-Fi that they need to keep going to school, the iPads, etc. So this year I took away getting to know the students really individually, hearing what they need, and then communicating that to everyone, like administration, in my reopening committee meetings, right? What I said all came from the students, the library opening, all of it came from the students. Before that, as programming chair, something that I carried with me was and knowing how to manage the budget, right? That first came from me seeing the budget in Queens College Association and being like, whoa, that's a lot, right? But with that, I was able to take that with me and learn how to do it myself this year. I also sat as a student senator and as an academic senator. That's where we passed the credit, no credit for the first time before we passed it again this year. That's where I learned how to properly advocate. Before that, I was philanthropy chair, and that's where I learned how to be kind. That's where I reinforced how to be kind, that people are going through things that you might not know, and to always put people first, right? And that the students do come first, and that people really need things like the food pantry, the mobile food pantry. It came from my philanthropy experience. So with all that, I also work in CUNY. So I work it's like work study with CUNY, where I also speak on these same issues about students food insecurity. I speak about students who need access, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you, President Clue. I'm sorry, that's all the time we have. Louis, can you talk to us about what experiences you have that prepare you for this job and set you apart?
So some experiences I have would be originally the governor of public relations at a different college at LaGuardia. I've been the co-chair of public relations for 2 terms now. And then also the current QC Arts president. I understand in a way of some of the things students may want and how to affect them in the correct manner.
All right. Are there any particular anecdotes or skills you feel that you have learned in your prior roles that you feel prepare you for your role as Student Association president?
I feel in the previous roles, understanding how to communicate and understand people's opinions respectfully, and going forward that to work with everyone in a cordial and formal manner. And this also includes different viewpoints, as my choice for vice president, Brandon, who is conservative, but we have worked together to compromise and work towards one goal on benefiting the student body at large.
All right, thank you. Zaire, you brought up a little bit earlier in the conversation about how you are actively involved with working with QC administrators. I think you mentioned how they were a family of sorts. I'm not sure if I got that right, but can you tell us what kind of spokesperson you are behind closed doors that the QC student body doesn't see? What kind of advocate are you when you're in meetings with administrators?
When I'm in meeting with administrators, I go in first with my head held high, right? With the strength of my team behind me, with the strength of everyone who voted me into here behind me, right? That's first and foremost. And I would say a family. We definitely have a great working relationship. And part of that includes putting the students first and always making sure that everyone is held accountable, right? Making sure that we're doing the best that we can to provide for the students. It's not really like, I wouldn't say family. I'd say a great working relationship in which I can reach out to them when I need. When a student comes to me with an issue, I can automatically reach out to them, set a meeting, right? Set a meeting, speak to them about what the issue is and how we can solve it. So I'd say a great working relationship with keeping each other accountable.
Got it. And my apologies for the misunderstanding. Got it. Lewis, let's go to you. How do you see yourself at meetings with Queens College administrators? What kind of spokesperson will you be?
So at meetings with administration, I would understand their viewpoints, but ultimately we speak for the students. And when administrators say items that are incorrect or not beneficial for the students, I will speak up and disagree and try to reach a compromise which would benefit the students rather than the faculty itself. Because I've seen sections where departments would just go based on the faculty, and it creates an unfair environment for the students.
Would you be able to elaborate a little bit more on that, just so we could have more context and get to know a little bit more about what kind of spokesperson you'd be?
So in terms of the credit received, I saw that President Wu joined the faculty's decision to specify certain classes that were not able to be credit received, which was unfair and disrespectful in a term towards students, because some of these classes may seem easy, but again, we are in a virtual world and some of these students have personal issues and might not be able to do the best they can in each individual class.
All right, thank you. Zaire, let's go back to you. How will you handle conflict within your own administration?
How will I handle conflict within my own administration? So I have experience in handling conflict. This year was a tough year for all of us. So I had to have some experience in handling conflict. And the way it goes is we try to, because we are all student leaders, we were all either voted in or appointed in. So we're not here for conflict. We're here to work together and for a larger goal than we are. So the first step that I would take is trying to handle it in-house. As president of an organization, I should be able to sit with the people who do have a conflict and have an adult conversation with them, see where both sides lie, and definitely come to a compromise, because that's the point, not who's right, who's wrong, but a compromise. The next step that I will take, it has been solved in-house, right? Where I have met with something like that in my experience, but the next step would be going to administration, like Dwayne or AVP Jarvis, and asking them if they could be a better mediator maybe. And if not, then it'd be in administrators' hands as to where else it would go.
And just to follow up on that, how would you work to make sure that if elected, your administration ensures a fair workload to all the people who you plan to appoint to committees?
So at the beginning of the year, right, we all map out what our workload is, right? Academic affairs, they have 3 town halls per semester. Programming, they usually have a bigger workload because they are programming and they have more events, and PR works closer with them. But just in making sure that everyone sticks to the schedule, right? And that's where myself, Kayla, Saskia, Rita, we would all come in and make sure that everyone is sticking to the schedule, but also providing people support, like making sure all the committee members feel supported. They know that we're here to help them, and they don't feel like they have to compare themselves to each other, because they could come to me for support. They could come to Kayla for support, Saskia, Rita, and make sure that everything that they need gets done. So it's not really a fight amongst each other. It's more of how can we all work together to make these events happen for these students.
Got it. Lewis, to you, how do you plan to handle conflict within your own administration?
So I believe the best option would be first hearing both sides of the conflict, and then rather than having a student and students, I think it's best to have Dwayne or another mediator attend it, because if it might be the wrong thing and from the mediators, student mediator be said, and it could escalate worse and then end up in administration either way. So any in-house conflict would just have a meeting with the vice president, or Dwayne with the two individuals or more.
Okay, and how would you make sure that the workload of your administration is fair and respectful to all the people you plan to appoint to these committees?
I would make sure that each task is equally balanced and fair to each chair. And if there's any issue that they have with such a task, it would be minimized or made in a way that they're comfortable with it. So, for example, if public relations would not want to create flyers or be on social media, that could be taken off by the secretary or a president for SA.
All right, thank you. President Kalu, let's go back to you. A lot of students on campus actually aren't aware of the responsibilities of student association president. They aren't aware of the boards and the committees you sit on, so on and so forth. How would you work to promote transparency if reelected?
If reelected, I would work to promote transparency by both something that, so by promoting everything. So if something is passed through the Senate, posting it, right? Much like the academic Senate has a website, the student Senate should have one also. So posting the budget where everything is passed, who our chairs are, who our vice chairs are. I also want to reinstill office hours, right? So all the chairs, the vice chairs, and e-board, of course, would have to have designated times during their week, about 4 hours per week, where students can come in and speak to us if they need something, just to come and speak to us and let us know what they need. And that would help promote transparency also, because you know exactly who to go to, you know who does what, because we do have 11 committees, right? So having that transparency of everyone knowing what everyone does would be done through office hours, and also a website where we post everything that we do.
Thank you. Lewis, we'll go to you. How would you work to promote transparency of what your job entails and the actions you take?
So with each position and committee, I would recommend having one site or one tab within the Queen's College website specifying each position. So president would be the main spokesperson of Queen's College and so forth. Public relations chair explains it, programming explains it, and what seats and what committees they are on and what they advocate for students, as well as the current budget and how the budget used, where we could have minutes written down and recorded and all accessible for all students on one tab.
Just to clarify, some of the things you mentioned in regards to some of the roles for the committees and, a tab where students can identify president, I believe that is readily available on the Office for Student Development Leadership page. So I believe you're talking about revamping the page, if I could understand you correctly.
Correct, revamping it, because it has been outdated and we could improve it and keep revamping it every election cycle.
Okay, duly noted. So let's move on to the next segment and talk about courses and curriculum. So Zaire, what is your stance on the format for courses in the upcoming year? Would you be in favor for in-person, online, or hybrid courses? What direction should Queen's College take?
I'm in favor for hybrid courses. I'm in favor of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right, on all aspects of the board. So first, expanding curricula to include more diverse classes, so students are able to get the degree that they want and not have to double major or double minor, right? But in terms of just learning, I'm in favor of the hybrid model. A lot of students really want to go back. A lot of students don't have a safe space to study at home. Those students, they should be able to have the ability to go back, the equity to go back. And as for the students who do have Wi-Fi at home, who are more comfortable at home, who are more comfortable studying at home, they should also get a chance to be able to do that, especially our international students who might be studying in a different country and you might not even know it, right? They should also have a chance to be at home. Students with families who are immunocompromised, right? And they're afraid to go to school. There's no reason as to why they have to go to school, because we've learned that we can do it online, right? Before, when students with accessibility issues, when students with disabilities would ask for an online component to cater to them, to help them to be able to do everything and not have any absences from school, they were told that we can't do online, but we've proved that we can, right? So we should use that to the best of our ability to make sure that everyone feels represented. Everyone has an option to do what is most comfortable, but not only most comfortable, but most fair and equitable to them, right? So as I said earlier, it would be amazing if, as a professor is teaching in person, right, if only an in-person model is available, they should be able to have a Zoom up, right? Right next to them. They should be able to have a Zoom up because they know how to use Zoom now. So students at home are able to learn the same thing in real time. So there's no that it's like extra work if it's happening in real time.
Hey, thank you, President Kalut. So, Louis, what is your stance on the issues? Do you believe that we should return to in-person learning? Should we maintain online, or should we go for a hybrid format? What direction should Queens College take?
I definitely would go for an in-person, but I believe the hybrid is the best option for now, because students are anxious, stressed, and just suffering in the current conditions with the pandemic. And as you mentioned, with no Wi-Fi or don't have a safe place to learn and study, it's best if we reopen fully, or at least some questions, at least some areas of expertise of some areas of the campus reopened.
All right, thank you. Zaire, let's go back to you. Can you tell us what you think Queens College is doing well, and what do you believe needs to be improved on?
I think the Queens College is doing well. I think Queens College is doing well in terms of listening, right? We were able to get a CUNY-wide credit, no credit policy passed twice, 2 years in a row, right? So now we're hoping to do that again, right? So they did get the library open. The library is open, right? There is a shuttle bus going out, delivering food in different communities. That's amazing. What I think Queens College could be doing better is, where do I start? What I think Queens College could be doing better is providing more resources, right? A lot of students had issues with paying, with like their tuition. So, right, let's move on to One Stop, right? That includes tuition payments, registration for classes. That includes any bureaucratic thing that you would do through Queens College. This year, it was really slow, and I understand that everyone was working from home, and it was harder to work in real time, I guess, with the students, but I would really appreciate to see that process move much faster along, so that students are able to get their important things done in real time. That includes like emails to administration when they need something like coursework, so that I would still like to help them, but not as like direly. Do you see what I mean? Like a lot of students were
30-second reminder, President Kalut. 30-second reminder.
Okay, a lot of students were emailing me that they absolutely could not get an appointment. They were on a website for 45 minutes. That should not be happening.
Okay, thank you, President Kalut. Louis, can you tell us what do you believe Queens College is doing well, and what do you believe needs to be improved on?
I do feel the library services is a great aspect of on the path to reopen, and then as well as the food services. What could be improved on is more outreach to the financial aid office, student life, where we can have more information given to students interested in clubs, and then also just in general the services provided for all students, financial aid, the students with disabilities.
All right, thank you. Just as a reminder, if there are any students who would like to ask questions to the candidates, they may do so and type in your question in the chat, and we will highlight it. We will highlight it on the screen for convenience sake. We are looking to take Q&A from the audience, so now is your time if you have a question before we move to closing remarks. Alrighty, seeing no questions, we will move right to closing remarks. So, Louis, tell us, why should attendees vote for you?
I know throughout this debate, I may not have given as much information or have seen reliable in the position, but I understand what students are going through, and I feel like I can give a great impact and benefit all students equally and respectfully, regardless of their background, political party, or stance. And I truly do want to make changes throughout Student Association.
All right, thank you. President Clute, why should attendees vote for you? What is your message to voters right now who are listening?
My message to voters right now who are listening is I would love a chance to continue to advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would love a chance to go to that protest again next year, where hundreds of CUNY students walked across the Brooklyn Bridge into City Hall and demanded for a tuition freeze. And we not only got a freeze, but we got more money, right? So I'd like a chance to still sit in these meetings and still stand up for students and student rights, promoting diversity, equity, inclusion. I would also like to expand our networks, right? So like I said, building bigger and better networks with the Career Engagement Office, right? Helping them be able to reach more students when they promote the careers, when they promote the careers and they promote the internships, right? So I'd like to have a more connected QC, because QC is such a gem. We have so many different fellowships, internships, job offers, right? And just not a lot of people to be able to take those and distribute it to everyone. So I'd like to be that connector that helps distribute it to everyone.
Alrighty, thank you both for your time and for sharing your thoughts on the issues. As a reminder, voting opens at 12:01 a.m. Sunday night, so please be on the lookout for an email to your Q mail and check out the social media for Student Life in Queens College. And in case you didn't catch the earlier parts of the debate, Zaire Kalute is the incumbent from the Student Serving Students Party. Luis Villa is running as the presidential candidate on behalf of the Students Advocating Progress Party. Thank you everybody for attending, and enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you.